So, welcome back one and all to Kickback. We are back again. Another Sunday, another Kickback. Slightly different lineup for you today in terms of our content, but we do have our two superb hosts back with us today, Lewis and Nick. How are we doing?
There was a bit of a pause in that, as if to say, like, what do I say here?
I don't know. I kind of hadn't prepared anything for what I was just going to say. But are you guys doing okay? Everything fine?
Yeah. Just as normal.
Just the normal.
Nothing.
Just same old.
Yeah, nothing much has really changed. I mean, yeah, same old.
Same for me, really. Nothing's happened this week. It's been a pretty quiet one. Villa have wrapped up Anwar El Ghazi on a permanent, so I'm happy about that. This
kind of makes me think I need to do a few more things, you know.
Yeah, same.
I can't just be coming in here saying, yeah, same old.
Yeah, it's literally every week.
Yeah.
Every week is like, how are we doing? And then you just go, just a normal one. Just normal, really. But what about you, Nick?
And another week, another disappointed England fan.
Yeah, true.
Just
true.
Awful. I really, really thought we'd win that, and it's just. I'm happy we got third place in an inaugural tournament.
Yeah,
you know, it's considering we was in a group with the team who knocked us out of the World Cup and Spain.
Very true.
But the way we went about it was awful. We relied on Pickford to score our fifth penalty. That shows
a powerful penalty.
That was a good penalty. Fair play to him for stepping up and taking it.
Got a question about that later on, actually. But you did predict Portugal winning, though.
Yes, I did say Portugal.
You did correctly say that Portugal were going to win.
So there isn't going to be an angry mob after you now.
Yeah, well, there we go.
It's very true. So as I said, we do have a slightly different lineup. We have a brand new segment in place of Transfer Window Waffle, where we'll be covering some intriguing stories from the world of football. We're not going to tell you the name yet because it's an incredible name. So what we're going to do is we're just going to reveal that in a bit. We do have fan questions at the end as well, so we're going to be covering some of those. But for now, we're going to be taking our main topic, which is nightmare owners. So I feel like most clubs in football, especially in England, have come across one of these where you've got an owner who's come in who has been a nightmare, poor transfer activity, rubs everybody up the wrong way.
Or just does nothing.
Yeah, on the opposite side of the spectrum. So we have some absolute brutes today in here, some guys who came and almost single-handedly destroyed football clubs. I think Lewis is going to be going first for this segment.
Yeah.
So, Lewis.
Yeah.
Take it away. Is it someone who is unheard of, or is it quite a safe one that you already know quite a bit about?
I wonder who it's gonna be.
Okay. Before I start, I had to do these people were just perfect. But it's the Glazers, and
who do they own then?
They own Manchester United.
Who are they? Who are Manchester United?
Yeah.
Manchester. Where's Manchester?
Okay. Do you want me to just give you guys like 2 minutes just to roast Man United?
Man United are bad.
Before I can start.
You've done it all to yourself all season. We don't need to. Soften the blow.
That's the only roast you really need.
That's why I get it every week. Then is it? Okay. But they also own an NFL team,
right?
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and let's just say they aren't doing too well either. But
whoops.
Basically, for those people who don't know, because I think some people know who they are, but because they're never really around, I don't think everyone will know who they are. So they're basically an American business family. So I think everyone in their family really kind of just does the business part. And they took over Manchester United in 2005.
Yeah.
And I was trying to look for a figure to see how much they bought Man United for. The only figure I could find was around £800 million.
Okay.
And
I've got a figure in my head of how much they purchased it. I believe it's like 735 million.
I was going to say, that's just like that. I think that's just around
the number I always would come. I know it was in the middle, between 700 and 800, which is a lot, man. Okay. I don't know what. They must be worth well over $1 billion now.
Well, yeah, I was going to say there must be, but the thing that always annoyed me about them was they took out a loan and then once they bought the team, they put the loan on the club. So now the club have to pay off the loan.
Classic.
And I'm just wondering, do either of you guys have any idea how much of a loan they took out to buy? Because I think they did pay partly for the club, but
yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm guessing they couldn't afford to buy us outright, so they had to take out a loan.
I wouldn't know where to start, to be honest.
I'd guess 400 million.
Okay, it's not. I wouldn't say it's not that extreme. It was
272 million.
That's like the middle of the figure that I found, basically between 265 and 275.
Well, that was a decent guess then.
That was actually a pretty good guess.
I'm pretty happy with that. I'm normally pretty bad with guesses, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, the problem is, like, they took out the loan, which I never really agreed with the fact that they put it on the club, because now, well, I think the fact that we've been in decline as well has something to do with this as well.
Yeah.
And
carry on.
I was just going to add that the interest rates, this is by 2010, the debt have risen to 716 million, and the interest rates were up to 16%.
It's not going brilliantly.
No, and
not really gone to plan.
Do you know who the Glazers bought United from?
I was going to say that because I
do.
I can't really remember, because I feel like I vaguely remember them being taken over, but like I don't think I was really like old enough to care about the owners of clubs at that point. So
the weird thing is, when they took over in 2005, that was around about the time I first properly started watching football. So me too, really, I actually wouldn't know that.
No, who actually is it?
So the guy who owned it was a guy called JP McManus. So JP McManus is really big in the horse racing world. He started off owning a bookmakers.
I see how you know this now.
And he basically made all his money from gambling, and then he bought a 28% stake in United. And then him and a guy called John Magnier, who's also a racehorse owner, they fell out with.
His name rings a bell.
With Sir Alex Ferguson in 2004, and they said, you know what, we want to sell. So I think he bought United for something like 250 million and has sold it on for 750. So
it's all right then.
And now this guy is now worth 2.1 billion. So that shows it was in his best interest to sell on at the time, I think.
Yeah, pretty savvy sale. What do you guys think, specifically Lewis? Like, obviously being a Manchester United supporter as well. How much of Man United's decline do you think has been down to the Glazers, and how much of it do you think is down to obviously Sir Alex Ferguson's retirement and the introduction of Moyes and then Van Gaal and then Mourinho? Do you think that it was the end of that Alex Ferguson era, or do you think it was the Glazers who have kind of put a negative spanner in the works?
I don't think you can put all the blame on them, because obviously we do have other problems in the club as well.
Yeah.
But I think it had something to do with it, because we're in a considerable amount of debt, and it is currently, as of June 2018, the debt has come down to 487 million. Even though the club had earned 590 million.
So what's the thinking then from a United perspective? Obviously, I don't follow United as much as you would. For the 8 years that the Glazers were in charge with Ferguson, what was different in the 6-8 years that have followed? Why was there so much success? Is it just down to him? Because obviously the Glazers have invested a lot of money into United, and they're only getting a bad rap since Ferguson left. I think there's a clear trend that manager would just isn't. Obviously, you can't replicate a manager like him. They've struggled to find the guy, and it's like Man United now as a franchise. It's not a football club. Whereas I look at Liverpool as a football club and not a franchise. A bit similar to like Real Madrid's quite similar. There's like an imbalance between the background. So like Perez at Real Madrid, the Glazers, with the sporting directors. Woodward clearly knows nothing about football, which has been stressed in the press.
Even Van Gaal's come out and said that.
Exactly. So I feel the Glazers, they obviously invested money in the first 8 years the right way, because they had somebody spearheading the project who was Ferguson. He was traditional. he loved United, whereas now you've had managers since, and everything's been on Woodward's terms. So that's why I think a lot. I think Woodward's in modern day is a con artist. Really, I think he's so bad, and the quicker United get him out, the better you'll be.
Yeah, I think the problem I have with your point is, by 2010, Manchester United fans were actively protesting outside of Old Trafford that they wanted the Glazers out. So
this is when Ferguson was still there.
This was 3 years before he retired. And
it's interesting, yeah. I think I remember that, actually, now you said that.
Yeah, I was reading something, and there were a lot of Man United fans doing that. And the problem I have is, it's not completely their fault, but when an owner comes in, they've come in, bought the club, and they've basically just gone back to America. And they'll come to games every now and then.
Yeah.
And they promised, when they bought the club, this is like a quote, they promised to keep an open line of communications with the club when they took over.
This reminds me of my club Villa's old owner, Randy Lerner. He also owned a sports team in the United States. My mind's gone completely blank. Cleveland Browns, that was it, yeah. Randy Lerner, so he promised the same thing, that there would be that line of communication. He was very rarely in the country. He would be in America most of the time. You'd see him at maybe like a game or two every season. And look what that ended in: relegation, poor choice of managers, poor choice of backroom staff, poor choice of players. And obviously we've come off the back of that and been taken over successfully and come back up to the Premier League. But obviously that's not really going to happen with Man United because of the transfer budgets they have, the backing that they have, and all of the resources at their disposal. They're not going to be in a relegation battle unless there was some sort of incredible situation, some sort of catastrophe. But it's a bit of a trend with a lot of American owners. Obviously, I don't want to create any sort of stereotype because there are some American owners who have done a really good job. But do you think that is a bit of an issue as well? Is a lack of communication between the Glazers and between the other staff members and important people at the club?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think it's also the fact that it's kind of like usually the owners are the people who have like the forward thinking to like put the money kind of back into the club. Yeah. So they'll put some money into the club to help it progress. And I think they said like the Sir Bobby Charlton stand hasn't been touched in 45 years.
Right, yeah.
Like, it hasn't been kind of like done over, hasn't been
refurbished.
Yeah, refurbished. And the thing, I don't know whether you guys remember this, but we have had mice and rat infestations as well. And I was reading an article the other day, and a mouse actually ran out onto the pitch in the middle of an FA Cup game.
Right, yeah.
And I just think that kind of shows that they're not really putting anything into the club. They're not like... Because I think people have said over the years that the stadium, like Old Trafford, could do with a bit of refurbishing, because it's getting a bit old, and it's just that I feel like they're kind of due a bit of a refurb. And you look at teams like that when there's clubs, a lot of big clubs are making sort of like either major improvements or they're getting new stadiums like Spurs and teams like that. You kind of think Old Trafford's due a bit of a modernisation. Sorry, can't get my words out. But I agree with that. To be fair, I think that's fair analysis. I just think that they're kind of taking more money out of the club than they're giving back, and I understand it's a business and they want to make a profit off it. But if you're going to buy a club just to take money out of it, why are you owning a club? Because look at Roman Abramovich.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he's obviously made a profit off Chelsea, but he's put money into the club as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just think that I think the reason people didn't think the Glazers were that bad when Ferguson was there was because the club was doing well. And when the club's doing well, you're not going to be bothered with what happens behind the scenes.
It's one of those things, yeah. I mean, a lot of the time you'll see if the results on the pitch are going well, then it normally keeps fans happy. I suppose you see situations at clubs recently where you've seen, teams winning the league, like Barcelona and Bayern Munich as well, despite and still, the fans are up in arms about the management and about the ownership or the presidency, etc., like that. Like a lot of fans calling for Valverde to be sacked, Kovac to be sacked, that kind of thing, despite the results on the pitch. But for me, it seemed like, despite those protests, there were still a lot of Man United fans who were, perfectly happy with how things were going, because they still had that sort of they still had some brilliant results every week. So it depends what you need, really. I think what I've also seen with Man United, especially since Sir Alex Ferguson went, is there's not really any direction. You don't really know what they're trying to do with the club.
Yeah, and I feel like that partly has to come from the owners, and I think
definitely.
I think that the good thing is about Ferguson was he was kind of like that manager. People would let him have that type of control, because he knew what he was doing. But
like Wenger as well. Obviously, he kind of didn't know what he was doing towards the end, but I know what you mean. He's that sort of figure where you just let him do whatever he wants.
And it's like now that Ed Woodward has more control, I think the managers that have come in have had less kind of that insight of like where the club's going.
You kind of do think like how it's one of those things with football clubs a lot of the time now, because there is that different hierarchy where you've got, say, a director of football, you've got a chief exec as well, you've obviously got a manager. You don't know who's making the decisions on the transfers, that kind of thing, and you'll see, just like a complete lack of cohesion between everybody at the club. There's no joined up thinking between the staff behind the scenes and the manager half the time, and obviously people have different views, but I don't feel like Solskjaer is necessarily the guy to guide Manchester United into the next kind of big era and make some big transfer decisions.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how much control he has.
Yeah,
because I think, considering he's a Man United legend, and considering like how he's kind of a big figure in Manchester.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think they might give him a bit more control than they've given, let's say, Mourinho and Van Gaal.
Yeah, I think they might do. Because he's that sort of, he's a bit of a club legend.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't though. But I could also see them giving him a bit more control. But I think that the problem is now in England is that there's so many foreign owners, so the direction of clubs isn't really based on the English game as well.
No, I mean that's the thing. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of owners who have coming in from abroad and employing sort of different styles of recruitment. They're employing differently, and then even English owners are doing a similar thing. We see like Brighton. Brighton still a British-owned club? I don't know. I can't
they're
think.
owned by Tony Bloom. It's
Tony,
like
an
Irish, like an English businessman entrepreneur.
So like
also in racing. That's why
he
I know
is,
that.
Isn't he? Yeah. Tony Bloom. Yeah, he's one guy. Brighton have kind of the way that they've gone about transfers is different to a lot of the other top flight sides, where they go and they'll sign someone who's kind of like from the Eredivisie or from the lower end of the of La Liga, someone like Florian Andone. They have like a slightly different technique, and then they've also gone and buy some young players as well from smaller sides. So you are seeing also Southampton, but I think they do have foreign owners in there now. But we are seeing that come into the English game a lot more. But Manchester United, I don't know whether you agree with this, Lewis, but I feel like a lot of the time with United, because there is this big club mentality, which is fair because they are a big club and they are a very, very, very successful club.
They're a massive club.
Yeah, but they kind of take for granted like the fact, they'll think, oh, we're Man United, we don't need to take a risky decision or sign or have like a proper sort of philosophy when it comes to transfers, because we'll be fine whatever happens because we're a big side. But that's evidently not really happened.
Yeah, I think it's more like we've taken for granted basically Sir Alex Ferguson.
Pretty much,
because he came in and he's transformed the club from a mid-table English league team, well, a mid-table Premier League team. No, actually, it would have been a mid-table Division 1 team.
Yes.
Because I think when he took over...
It would have been the 80s, wouldn't
it?
It
would have been
86,
yeah. So mid-late 80s. So he transformed us from that to arguably the best club in England.
Yeah, I think so. Over the last sort of 25 years, undoubtedly for me. Like, I mean, in terms of the silverware, in terms of the players that they've had, and in terms of the trophies they've won, then possibly in the best sort of that treble-winning team, probably the best English team of all time, obviously rivaled by Man City, and I would also say, to be fair, Liverpool recently. But yeah, I mean, I think you made a really good case for the Glazers.
Thank you.
It's no problem. Would you mind seeing the Glazers continuing, or do you think now is the time for a takeover?
I think that if they're to continue, we need another manager. Like, we would need basically another. We would need another Sir Alex Ferguson to come in and kind of have that control, which I just can't see happening. So I think we would need to set. I think if we are going to improve as a football club, I think we do need the Glazers out. But the problem, I think, is because we're such a big club, the only people who are going to be able to afford to buy Man United are kind of just another version of the Glazers.
I get what you mean.
Because that's what I think that's what a lot of top businesses, well, a lot of top businessmen would do. They'll buy a club like Man United, see that we can make £500,000 profit or earn £500,000 in a year, and they'll come in, take out how much they want, and then just leave it. Which
pretty much,
I think is I think it's kind of starting to ruin the club a bit. But that's just what modern day. That's just what modern day. Like, I wouldn't just say football, I'd say more sport as well. Yeah. Because with that mentality, you're kind of starting to turn football into more of a business.
Definitely. I think we're seeing big clubs go that way a lot more now. At least you've got a tractor sponsor, and you can get your hands on some free tractors whenever you need to. But if you guys want to let us know what you think about the Glazers, about Manchester United in recent times, then you know what our socials are. Kickbacksportspod@gmail.com is the email. Twitter and Instagram rather is kickback_pod, and then we also have Facebook. We have Patreon as well. So do have a little look at the side of your screens. We're going to move on to Nick now, who has another nightmare owner, or maybe owners like we've had with Lewis's pick. Who have we got, Nick? We got someone different.
Yes.
Well, so obviously.
It'll be a club. Yeah, I'm not going to do the Glazers. We'll be here all day talking about Man United.
Yeah,
we'll call this podcast the Man United podcast.
Oh, okay, not this again.
So the team, I'll be focusing on Massimo Cellino.
Right.
So
yes.
He owned Leeds between 2014 and 2017. So Leeds have obviously been through a lot. I mean, when I was growing up, when I first got into football in 2001.
Yeah.
Leeds were in the semi-final of the Champions League at this point. They had an amazing team. They had Kjell, Viduka, Smith, Hart, all these really good players.
They still have Ferdinand at that point.
They had Ferdinand at that point, yeah. They had Robinson in goal. They had a really good team. Yeah. And to think Leeds obviously Leeds had a good season last year, but at this point, this was probably the lowest I'd say Leeds have ever been in there, in the past 20, 25 years of their history, really. So I'll open with a quote because I think it's important to establish what kind of owner Cellino was. Cellino himself said in his statement to Leeds fans, "If you can survive working with me, you can survive anything." Which
so
obviously
he has quite a sort of low opinion of his own abilities as a football club owner.
That is the definition of "I'm going to be a nightmare."
Yeah, I think he's cataclysmic to say the least, to be honest. So a few little facts about him. He had 8 managers in 3 years, so that shows you enough. His nickname in Italy, please forgive the pronunciation, is Il Magna Allenatore, which means the manager eater.
Oh my life!
So not even the manager sacker, the manager eater. So it's obviously dramatic.
Did he actually eat them?
I believe. I think that stands a bit of validity.
That's horrible.
I know. He's it's a similar situation to the Glazers. They're not football. He's not a football person. He has nothing, no interest in the sport. He's just a businessman looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
Looking to go into clubs, make as much money as possible, and kind of get out there. So he got all of his fortune given to him by his father when his father passed away, and their family owned Cagliari, the Italian team, for 22 years.
Yeah.
Until they sold that on to somebody else, probably for the benefit of Cagliari, I imagine. So it was literally chaos straight away with Cellino. So he went there in 2014, didn't officially own the club and sacked the manager. So the move hadn't even gone through, and he'd said, I want the manager out. So the FA then refused that because he wasn't officially the owner. So McDermott was reinstated. A week later, Cellino successfully took over Leeds and sacked Brian McDermott. So McDermott was sacked in a space of 2 weeks. So I think he knew it was coming anyway. So what happened after that then, it was the end of the season. It was in pre-season. They had no fixtures arranged at all. They didn't have a manager. So they approached a man called David Hockaday. So David Hockaday was coming for an interview, and he was expecting to take over the under-23 side, or he was expected to be there in a supporting role. And Cellino turned around and went, do you want to be the head coach? So at the time, Hockaday was a manager of Forest Green in the conference. And Hockaday was like, do you know what you're doing? And Cellino said, well, you a good manager? And Hockaday said, yeah, I'm a good manager. He said, there you go then. So from there, he arranged them to go out on a 3-game Italian pre-season break.
This sounds like a disaster already.
It gets worse, trust me.
An under-23 supporting role,
and
he's the head coach.
Exactly, yeah.
This guy knows nothing about football.
Just to put that into perspective, David Hockaday is now the head of male football at South Gloucestershire and Stroud College.
That's even worse than Ed Woodward, that is.
So that shows you kind of...
That's poor.
Probably that is his level.
It's probably a great college, but at the same time...
It's not,
No.
It's not quite Leeds United,
Not quite Leeds.
So they went to Italy for a 3-game pre-season tour. The first game they won 16-0. It was an amateur team, and
I was going to say who are they playing?
Their goalkeeper Silvestri ended up going in goal for the amateur team just to stop some of the shots that the Leeds players were, were facing in the end. So that kind of helped the scoreline. The second game, the team didn't show up who they were playing because they didn't know anything about the games, didn't have a venue organised or anything like that. And apparently the third game was fine, all went to plan. When they got back, there was a massive outbreak of illness in the club, and it's because Cellino refused to pay the fees to get the swimming pool cleaned. It was $25,000 to get the pool refurbished, and something like 60 members of the league backroom staff were off ill. I don't know what with, I don't know obviously how serious it was, but it got to the point where Cellino said, right, if we need cleaners, he sacked all of the cleaners on site and told the under-18s they should do all the cleaning because it would help the club progress and it would save money.
Brilliant.
So that was Hockaday's. Hockaday was only there for 70 days. He got sacked on the Saturday. Cellino on the Sunday said, you know what, it's probably my fault. I'll give him another chance. Didn't give him another game. On the Wednesday, sacked him again, saying it was his fault. So he then moved on.
Job security.
So now he's contradicting himself.
Priority.
Yeah, it seems to be a constant theme here that he thinks, you know what, I'm going to sack him. The next day he goes, I don't know, let's give him a chance. And then the day he
sacks him.
Yeah, you know what, I'll sack him. I don't like him. So he just announced some of the managers that he had. So he had Neil Redfern 4 times during his 8 managers. Ended up calling him a weak and a baby. And Neil Redfern's wife is actually one of the backroom staff at Leeds. So when Redfern was sacked, she was meant to step up and she was meant to be there in like a supervisory role.
Yeah.
And Chelino said, "I'm not having a woman anywhere near my club," and sacked her. So he's obviously
Lovely guy.
massive misogynist as well.
And now he's been sexist.
So then they appointed people like Durko Milanic, Juve Rosler, Steve Evans, and the last manager who actually outlasted Chelino was Gary Monk. So Gary Monk would have been there in 2017. So just a few more things he had to deal with. He was ordered to go back to Italy to face tax evasion claims in 2015, 2017. He tried to ban Sky Sports from entry to the game versus Derby in 2016 because he said there was an amnesty against the club. He was getting a bad rap, but obviously rights say that Sky Sports had every right to go to that game. I was going to
say, there might be a reason that he's got a bad rap.
So
potentially,
it got to the point where the Leeds were, they were similar to what you said, Lewis, about United, where there was people, protesting against the Glazers.
Protesting outside the stadium.
Every home game, outside the stadium, in the stadium, after the game, half-time, there was protests against Chelino, which is...
A bit like what Newcastle did with Mike Ashley as well.
Yeah, similar.
Getting up those banners and walking around the stadium.
Yeah, I think it was just relentless, because... If you notice, Leeds fans are a bit similar to West Ham in the sense that Leeds fans in their head think they're a big club. And don't get me wrong, they used to be a big club. They're not anymore. They're a championship team. I think they're on one of the longest runs of being in the championship now that Ipswich have been relegated. So, I think Bielsa is the man to take them forward. But I think, obviously, having owners like this, he's a bad guy. But my question is, who sold it to him in the first place? Who's happy to give Leeds this man a football club? Because he's obviously had a lot of issues. He's obviously a criminal with his tax evasion. He was disqualified from owning Leeds twice in his 3 years, and he tried to resign himself from owning Leeds, and I don't think that's even possible. I think he's a bit stupid. Like, he tried to resign himself from his own board.
Is that like the guy...
He sounds it.
What's the guy's name who owns Billericay Town? And he's like, I can't remember what his name is. Oh no, I just had it, but it's gone. Glenn Tamplin. He was like the owner of the club, and then he hired himself as the manager.
Yeah, I think I heard this.
And then sacked himself as the manager. And
it's
then
literally like he's looking in the mirror going, "You're not good enough."
Yeah, I don't understand. I literally don't get it. Sounds like a similar thing.
I think when you was talking about the Glazers, Lewis, I was gonna say something. I think with football owners, it's about picking the best of a bad bunch. They're all crooks. They're all criminals. You have the odd good one here and there. Like the Liverpool owners are absolutely fine. They seem good for the sport. They also own, obviously, I think they own the Red Sox and they own the Fenway.
Oh yeah.
The Fenway Sports Group. So I believe they own the Red Sox. I'm not sure. But yeah, with Chelino, he's just a nightmare owner. He eventually did sell Leeds on to another Italian businessman, and I think that's who appointed Bielsa. It looks like they're going in the right direction.
Is that like Radriziani or something?
Andrea Radriziani, yeah, that's it. So I don't know what you guys will think of that, but I think I was reading the story and I literally just had a smile on my face the whole way. Not a smile of joy, a smile of, am I reading what I'm reading? Because some of the stuff is just absolutely mental.
You don't think an owner will be able to get away with things like that either? Think
of not cleaning a swimming pool. It just seems so minuscule in the grand scheme of things.
Pretty much.
He's going to turn around and go, you know what? The under 18s can do it. They're not serving a purpose. They can go and do it. They get paid, 500 quid a week. Let's go and get our money's worth out of them. So I think Chelino still does own a football club. He owns Brescia in Italy.
Oh, right,
I think they're might be in the second division now.
I think so.
Serie B. So, good luck to Brescia, because I don't know what their under-18s are doing at the moment, but I imagine they're cleaning out the canteens or something.
I feel sorry for them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you will not get many better stories. Obviously, stories like what you hear about the Glazers, Mike Ashley's more business-orientated.
Yeah.
This guy just does not care. He has no human rights, no respect for anyone but himself. And the quote that I said at the start shows you he knows what he's about as well.
To be honest, from that story, it makes me think, did he even know what he wanted to do with the club?
It seems the club didn't have a direction. If you have 8 managers in 3 years, I know Watford had that season. I think they had 4 in one season, didn't they? But obviously,
it's kind of worked for Watford, hasn't it?
I was
Like
going to say,
changing their manager.
Watford have ended up. Well, at the moment, Javi Gracia is the third favourite to be the Chelsea manager, so I think that shows you that Watford are going in the right direction, whereas Leeds, who are undoubtedly a bigger club than Watford, are struggling to even get out of the Championship still. I think they were unlucky this year. I do think in any other year Leeds would have gone up if it wasn't for I think Sheffield United had a really good season. Their squad won't cope in the Premier League, and obviously
No, I can't see it.
Norwich got Pucky on a free. It was amazing, and obviously they had the players, Stuperman, Vranic. So I think any other year, I think the turning point was definitely that thing what happened with Villa.
Yeah,
I think that really blew Leeds' season up. So, and as I said, I do have a little soft spot for Leeds, and after reading this, I do feel like the fans deserve a bit of success. But sometimes things are self-inflicted, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
And if you let a man like this come into your club, a bit like what Vincent Tan did at Cardiff, where he changed the whole identity, coming and just said,
change the kit colour.
We're going to play in red now. And then the fans are like, okay, we'll just randomly start playing in red.
What was the Hull City owner as well who tried to change their name to like Hull City Tigers or something?
Tigers or something.
Alam. Yeah.
Oh, Assem Alam or something.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know if he's still there. I don't know if he's sold
sure.
up or what. But we are used to having some quite controversial owners
interesting guys
in England. But no one will ever beat Massimo Cellino.
It doesn't sound like it. But yeah, I mean that sounds pretty mad. Like I didn't know. I obviously had heard about Cellino before, and the fact that he was seen incredibly negatively by Leeds supporters and just English football fans, but I didn't know quite the extent of how bad he actually was. I think the guy who I've gone for is in a similar sort of vein, but completely, like, you guys wouldn't have heard of him, most of the listeners wouldn't have heard of him, and that's not saying that you're all stupid. It's just saying that I had to go like digging quite deep to try and find this guy. So you could really compare him to a kind of Massimo Cellino, but on a smaller scale. His name's Bulat Chagayev. So he's a Russian. He still is a Russian businessman, and it was in 2011 he bought a Swiss top division side called Neuchâtel Xamax. I don't know whether you guys have heard of them, but they're a club in the top flight in the Swiss Super League. Some of the ex-players you may have heard of: Haris Seferovic, who's currently doing pretty well at Benfica. And then they've also previously had Brown Ide, who you might remember from his stint at West Brom, and also Papa Bouba Diop as well. He played for Fulham and Portsmouth back in the day. So he took on sort of like a poison chalice in many ways. Chagayev, he bought the club when they were already in debt, and his aim from the start that he promised fans was that he would take them into Europe, which was a big ask because there's some comparatively big clubs such as like Basel, Young Boys in Switzerland, specifically Basel at that point. And he did not get off to the best start. So within months of coming into the club, well, basically, in his first 4 months, he sacked 4 managers, which is not a great start. Not brilliant.
Is that like a record or something?
Probably is.
I've never heard of that, a manager a month.
Yeah, 4 managers in 4 months. He also sacked a director. He sacked some other staff as well, some backroom staff, and he also sacked some players as well. And those sackings also saw a lot of staff and players resign at the same time. So this is a guy who also disbanded the official supporters group at the club. Because it's like he's quite unheard of and the club aren't like a particularly big club. I did struggle a little bit for information, but basically after less than a year rather of him becoming the owner, they were declared bankrupt as a football club, in debt by 23 million Swiss francs. Considering the size of the club, that is quite brutal for them. They were docked 8 points before they went bankrupt as well for failing to pay the players and their staff. The entire club collapsed, fell multiple divisions. I believe they fell to the 5th tier of Swiss football. And I think this guy is kind of your Cellino type figure, to be honest. Some other little facts about Chagayev as well. He was rumoured to be an illegal immigrant during his time in Switzerland. So there are rumours flying around that he didn't have a valid visa to be in Switzerland. In 2017, he was found guilty of criminal mismanagement, embezzlement of tax money, attempted fraud, and also falsifying documents. So he seems like a pretty legitimate guy. Not really. He also failed to attend a court date in 2017 and was apparently hiding out somewhere in North Africa. How do you guys think this guy sounds, Bulat Chagayev? Do you think he's a guy that you would want to take over your club?
No.
Surprise.
It reminds me of the guy who owned... do you remember when that guy overtook Angie McCatchkiller and they become like this mad team? They had like the Cena Traore and like jerk off.
Roberto Carlos.
And they put in like a deadline day bid for Messi, didn't they? Like 265 mil or something.
Yeah. And they had Eto'o,
whatever happened to them? I remember Liverpool lost to them in the Europa League in about 2012 away.
Yeah.
So I don't know what on earth happened to them. I've not even heard of them. I think they got relegated, didn't they, a few years ago?
Did. I feel like they might be like back in the top flight, or they might have just but they're like
I feel
nothing.
like they're back in it.
Yeah, I don't know whether they got relegated this season or anything, but
they defo got relegated a couple of years ago. I think they're back in there now, but I think it's similar to that. He went in there, he took over, and he spent loads of money, got them into loads of debt. I don't know if they went down because of financial fair play or what, but
I'm
it
not
wasn't
too sure.
quite to the level of Xamax where they've literally gone bankrupt. But clubs have done it, haven't they? Look at what happened with Juventus with the match fixing. They went down.
Yeah.
Rangers went down 4 divisions. Parma went down 4 divisions. So
Parma have made their way back up now, obviously.
I think these teams often do. I mean, I don't know. How is Xamax doing now?
That's what I was actually just going to go on to, because, as I said, they obviously were... I think they got relegated 5 divisions and climbed very slowly back up.
Is it the teams Xamax?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I was actually looking up how to pronounce them. I think the Xamax bit is right, but I wasn't quite sure about the Neuchâtel part, so I'm just saying Neuchâtel because that's how it looks like it would be pronounced. But yeah, obviously that happened in 2011 when they were taken over. They actually very quickly climbed back up the divisions, and they're actually back in the top flight now. So they're back in the Swiss Super League. They finished second from bottom, but they did manage to win the relegation playoff, so they've managed to maintain their position in the top flight ahead of the 2019-20 campaign. So, things are not going too badly for them now. At least they've got a basis to kick on. Big congratulations to whoever it is who's at the helm now, who's managed to get them back up 4 or 5 divisions, within the space of 5 or 6 years, because that's a pretty incredible feat there. But yeah, it's guys like this, you think, who actually allows them to take over clubs. What are the football associations in these countries doing to let guys like this slip through the net? And like who at the FA has said Massimo Cellino can come and take over a football club, and who is saying that Bulat Chagayev can go and take over Neuchâtel Xamax? It's absolutely incredible that these guys are even allowed anywhere near a football club. I mean, it's pretty much unbelievable.
It's probably something to do with money.
Basically,
You slide some money their way and they'll probably...
Yeah, well, I mean, there's all sorts of things like that may well be happening. I mean, if you look at this guy, he's been guilty of criminal mismanagement, embezzlement of tax money, attempted fraud, etc.
That's a massive red flag.
Yeah, and falsifying documents. This did happen in 2017, so this was, I think, post... after he left the club, but there was probably some of this stuff was going on at that time as well.
That's probably when it was going on as well.
Yeah, probably was. But you think he's probably quite good at covering up as well. Yeah. So I just thought I'd touch on this Chagayev guy as my one. Obviously, a little bit less to talk about because obviously we're not particularly familiar with the team or the guy himself. But yeah, I thought he would be a decent candidate because pretty much unheard of. I'd never come across this guy before, and I think he is someone that you can closely link to Cellino and that sort of style. And obviously, as Nick was saying, the guy who took over, Angie Makashkala as well. I think probably around about a similar time to this guy, actually, sort of 2011, 2012. That same sort of era. So I think that wraps up that segment, really. There's not too much else to say. Do you guys have anything else to say about Chagayev, or do you think that wraps it up nicely?
Oh yeah, I think what you said about him kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah?
It was like a bad crook sandwich where you had a bad crook.
Yeah.
George had a bad crook. Lewis had a bad crook, and then mine was just awful. So mine was like
Pretty
the
much.
filling.
The filling.
So it's like a really bad crook sandwich.
Bad crook sandwich, yeah. It's a good thing, a good point to end on there, I think. So yeah, obviously kickback_pod is our Twitter and our Instagram, and then kickbacksportspod@gmail.com is the email address. So if you do want to get in touch and tell us who your least favourite owners are, or the guy who destroyed your favourite club, then do get in touch, and we will shout some of you out the next time we're recording the following podcast. So we're going to be moving on to our brand new segment in a moment, where Nick is going to be covering some stories, or a story, depending on how much he's got each week. So firstly, we're going to do a little pause and have a little bit of music in between the two segments as usual, but I'm going to let Nick announce the name, because he came up with it literally minutes before we actually started recording. What's the name of your new segment, Nick?
Right, so we'll be focusing on stories from the footballing world of people basically behaving badly. So the segment's called Men Behaving Chadley.
Men Behaving Chadley. So yes, as we said, we have a brand new segment which Nick has cleverly entitled Men Behaving Chadley. Obviously the ex-West Brom and Tottenham and current Monaco, I believe, winger, Nasser Chadley. That's where the name came from. So we're going to be covering some stories where some footballers have behaved badly, as suggested in the title. I'm going to hand this over to Nick, so do let us know how you feel about this segment. Do you think it's good, and what can we do to improve it? We're always looking for some positive feedback, but here we go. Men Behaving Chadley, over to you.
Right, so the first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about a few famous stories that you've probably heard of, but I think it's important for people to understand these stories from the footballing world. I mean, these ones date back, one's when I was born, 1995, and the other one dates back all the way to 62. So the first one, might be something you've heard of, is a guy called Bela Gutmann. So Bela Gutmann was the manager of Benfica. So the Benfica, obviously, the first 8 Champions Leagues were shared between Benfica and Real Madrid. And in 1962, Bela Gutmann went to the Benfica board of directors and said, "Listen, I've done a good job.
Yeah.
I want to pay a rise. I've won you so many, first division titles. I've won you 3
Champions League,
3 or 4 Champions Leagues.
Fair enough.
Feel like I deserve a pay rise." And they just turned around and said, "No, we're not going to give you one." So Bela Gutmann stepped down from the role, and he said, "Not for 100 years will Benfica be European champions."
I've heard of this one
again. So.
This one's
5 Champions League finals later and 3 Europa League finals later, Benfica still haven't won a European trophy since those first 3 that they won when the Champions League was the old European Cup. And it's got to the point now where Benfica genuinely are a very superstitious club with this curse. So in 1990, they played the cup final in Vienna, and I'm sure you've heard of Eusebio. Eusebio is probably one of the most famous, probably the most famous Benfica player in their history, and Eusebio actually went to Gutmann's grave and prayed that the curse be lifted. He said, "Please, can we just win? We just want to win one final," and they went on to lose. So I think, talking about superstitions, going back to the guy I spoke about in the first segment, Massimo Cellino.
Yeah.
In Italian football, the number 17 is a cursed number. So, if you go to Ellen Road now, you'll not find number 17 anywhere at Ellen Road. So if your season ticket was on, row 17, it's actually now called 16B, and then it jumps up to 18. And the last player to wear 17 for Leeds was Michael Brown in 2014. After that, Leeds retired.
I was going to say, do they have a guy wearing the number 17?
I mean, I'm not sure about that now, but they've retired the number. The number got retired because it's, as I said, I imagine that number's since been reinstated.
I'm just having a little look now, just out of interest. But
yeah, definitely. During Cellino's 3 years anyway, there wasn't a number 17 who played for Leeds. So do you guys have any superstitions yourself? Is there anything that you have, do you think? Is there any unlucky numbers that you have or anything?
Not really. I've got my lucky number's 32, which completely just came out of nowhere. Like, for some reason I took like a weird shine to the number 32, and without knowing, my brother also has a weird thing with the number 32 as well.
Okay.
And it was also his lucky number. Neither of us knew that it was each other's lucky number until we both sort of mentioned it one day. And from that point onwards, me, my missus, my mum, my dad and my brother see the number 32 everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is a really, really strange one. I've even got it in my email address, which I'm not going to be giving out because I don't want all kinds of rubbish coming to me. But yeah, I don't know why. 32 just is a number that I've always been drawn to. It's not happened so much recently, but like I would literally, every time I check the time, it would be 32 minutes past the hour. My dad would like message me at the end of the day and be like, "You'll never guess what happened. I checked the time like four or five times at work today, and every single time it was 32 minutes past the hour." So like it's just weird. But yeah, I don't really have any unlucky numbers. I think obviously 13's an unlucky number in this country, but my mum's birthday's on the 13th, so for her it's always been all right. Nothing bad's ever happened to her on her birthday, so it's all been good. What about you, Lewis? Have you had any lucky or unlucky numbers or any superstitions?
That's the thing with me. My parents aren't like the type to be superstitious.
Don't salute any
anything.
magpies or anything like David Beckham.
But it's really weird because I've like some of my mates have them, but I've never really been that type of person because my parents, as I say, my parents haven't. Well, they don't believe in that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like the closest I've probably come is I've had a couple of bad Friday the 13th, which I can't really remember. But
I just sort of remember that they've not been.
Yeah, I probably just wanted to forget about them.
Yeah.
Just like but I'm not really that superstitious.
Interesting.
To be honest,
I feel that sports people are superstitious. I think even as England fans, I feel there's an air of superstition with England in major tournaments, like the amount of bad luck that we've had, and the way we've gone out of finals, and like the way we went out of like the Euros in the early 2000s and things like that. Ronaldinho beating Seaman from that far out, Southgate missing the penalty. So I think as English fans, we're definitely superstitious because we're always that, oh no, not this again kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think we can relate to this curse because we're on a kind
so.
of curse for ourselves. We're on a 60-odd year
pretty much
curse of not winning a major tournament.
I was going to say Benfica, they've got 44 years left.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll wait and see. I can't imagine New Savio's going to see him win one, but here's hoping they do.
So we'll do another podcast in 44 years' time.
Yep.
Just letting you guys know whether that curse has lived on for the 400 years.
God, we'll be I'll be 63 by then.
66. I'll still be going, it's fine.
Scary.
We'll still be here.
Nick will be even older, jeez.
I know, I'll be like an old man, I'll have a Zimmer frame, I will.
Still be letting us into the uni just for this every Wednesday.
Right, so the second story is, again, it's another probably archive story, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it relates to George's favourite person, James Milner, believe it or not.
Yes.
Oh, God.
And when we hear transfers now, we hear of a Bosman free. So a Bosman free relates to the player Jean-Marc Bosman. So in 1995, he wanted to leave his current team, RFC de Liège, who are obviously a Belgian team, and he wanted to sign for FC Dunkirk in France. And he's basically, Liège wanted so much for him, and Dunkirk turned around and said, "You're not worth that, we don't want to pay that much."
Yeah.
So, but Bosman wanted to move, so Bosman actually wrote to the EU Commission, and he said, "I want to leave this club. At the end of my contract, do they have to receive any money for me?" And it went on for years. I think there was 3 tribunals, and it ended up being that Bosman was allowed to move to, it wasn't even Dunkirk in the end, he moved to another team, believe it or not. But he moved to his next club on a free transfer. So this now, when you hear of De Gea's out of contract next summer, he can discuss a move in January with non-European clubs. That's because of Bosman, really. So any player who gets to leave at the end of his contract is down to this. This was like a big thing in football because this was the first sign of like player power. So now, obviously, players now dictate when they want to sign a contract. It's not on the club anymore. And Bosman just took things into his own hand. I mean, he only played like 150 games in his career, so he's more famous for this court debate than anything else. But that
not heard of him in any other stories apart from this.
Brings a question to me, to you two now. Who's the best free transfer you can think of the past 10 years?
Instantly, Lewandowski comes to my head.
I was going to say the same thing.
Even though I absolutely despise him.
I'm trying to think, we did a podcast on it, didn't we? Where we did. I think that was the one that we did with Dylan, where we did like the best free transfers. But I think there's outstanding candidates like Lewandowski. I think's up there. Perla, yeah, definitely.
I think it depends on like your criteria because best player, would be Lewandowski. But I think consider
everything.
Like,
consider success, trophies,
and considering how they were seen because Perla was seen as kind of washed up and past his prime. He went to Juventus and he looked like he's still
just rejuvenated
in his prime.
How many did he win? Did he win like 7 Serie A's or 8?
I think it was something like that. I think
I'll have a look.
For me, like you've got to say, it probably would be Lewandowski for me because you look at a guy who sort of contributed the most to the club that he signed for on a free over the longest period of time. It would probably have to be Lewandowski because I think he's had arguably his best ever season at Bayern Munich this season, just gone, and he's into his early 30s now. And he's been an incredibly consistent goal scorer since the second he joined the club over a long period of time. A lot of the time, if you get free players, free transfers, they're normally kind of like your older guys who are into their 30s and they maybe serve a purpose for a season or two. But
he won 6
Lever's been there for ages.
By the way.
6. It's still not bad going at all.
I think he won 1 with Milan in 2010, and then he must have won 5 with
Juve. Okay, that's fair enough.
Because haven't they won like 8 in a row now or something like that?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's 8 in a row.
It's not fair, and then they've won the last time, and then they're going to sign Ronaldo.
Actually, he won 2 with AC Milan and 4 with Juventus.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say I'm not sure if he was at Juve for that long, but I mean, I think player power is like one of those things. Obviously, it seems on the outside like a massive positive, and it probably is. But at the same time, you've got players who kind of like almost like hold their clubs to ransom and manipulate them to the point where they end up being able to leave on a free. You get players taking it a step too far, like refusing to play, or they just
Carlos Tevez.
Yeah, throw their toys out of the pram. Proverbially speaking, I shouldn't have bothered saying that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where player power. You got positives, you've also got negatives. Have we got any other men who have behaved chadly in the world of football?
Yeah, so it perfectly links to our story just about player power with Ross McCormack, who's obviously was hoping to sit on a 70 grand a week contract at Villa for this season.
Yep.
After his Premier League bonus in his contract. Obviously, subsequently has been released, which is for the greater good, because last year he was playing up front for Central Coast Mariners with Usain Bolt, so there you go.
Weird.
Another weird story. So obviously we all know about the story with Ross McCormack where he didn't show up to Villa training because he was locked in his house because those electric gates weren't opening, and Steve Bruce went round there.
Yeah,
I'm sure as a Villa fan, George, you know about that story well.
Yes.
Well, there's a story that I found out that's even better than the Ross McCormack story, and it involves Ross McCormack again. So, in about 2012, when Roy Keane was the Ipswich manager, Ross McCormack was on his way to the Ipswich training ground for a medical. A fee had been agreed, everything was in place, and Roy Keane was at the front of the training ground waiting to welcome him to the facilities. And on the way up to the training ground, Roy Keane noticed that Ross McCormack has been driven to the ground by his girlfriend, and he said he didn't drive. Right. So Roy Keane, he told Ross McCormack to open his window, and he said, "Do you drive, Ross?" And he said, "No." He said, "What's your girlfriend doing?" He said, "She's dropping me off for training." And Roy Keane turned around and went, "You can go," and just let him go.
That is classic,
and that
Roy
was
Keane.
the transfer fee was cancelled, and that was it.
That is Roy Keane.
That's Roy. That's Roy all over that.
He didn't let him in the building, so I was literally crying my eyes out when I read this story because it's just so him.
Yeah, that is so him.
And he's just had not much luck, Ross McCormack, with transfers. He was about 4 or 5 years ago. He was a really good, prolific striker, and I don't know where his career's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he was at Leeds or at Fulham, but I think he finished top scorer in the Championship, or
yeah,
was definitely up there. I mean, he
had a good season for Leeds as well, didn't he? I think he might have been at Leeds at this point.
Right, yeah, he might well have been, yeah.
So, yeah, the other story about Roy Keane that I've got is that he was... it would have been about 5 years ago with Peter Crouch, and Peter Crouch was driving his car into training, and Roy Keane, again, another car story, looked at him and just apparently gave him a look of disgust. As Peter Crouch just said, he said the next day I took the car back because if Roy Keane don't like it, then that's enough for me. And he ended up saying that he looked like a clown in a Mini. About Peter Crouch being in his car. So, basically, Peter Crouch had one look from Roy Keane, took his car back the next day, and never had that car again, which I found hysterical. So
Roy Keane is a guy who has behaved chaddily many times, to be fair, in the
he
footballing world. Both as a
care.
player, both as a manager, as a pundit, he literally just doesn't give a damn. You do whatever he wants, really.
He's very intimidating as well, so you just don't argue with him either.
I remember hearing stories about him when he was briefly assistant manager at Villa. I think it was when we had Paul Lambert. This was during like the dreadful period during the end of our first sort of chunk of time in the Prem when we got relegated. And he did say to Villa, "Good luck in the Championship." He said to their players, and then he left basically. So.
Yeah,
brief story, but
it's just traditional, isn't it? I think
he's a traditional guy.
He was on Sky Sports not long ago, and he was talking to Gary Neville. Gary Neville, it was after the Liverpool game when Shaqiri scored.
Didn't they end up arguing?
Yeah, and Gary Neville was like happy that Lingard had interest outside of football, because obviously we know Lingard is basically a socialite, and he loves, the further aspect of football.
With influencer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what people are saying. He's more of an influencer than a footballer. And Roy Keane turned around and just said it's nonsense. He's not good. He says he doesn't know the lad. He doesn't like him. Yeah. He's not good at football. He's not a Man U player. He shouldn't have any interest outside of football. And if he didn't have interest, he might be a better football player.
It's a fair point.
So,
yeah, that is a very.
I've heard some things about Lingard before, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys who you got a lot of ex-Man United players like Gary Neville who kind of very much side with Manchester United on everything. Like, if there's any stick, he'll be defending them. He can criticise them to a degree, but he's always kind of got their back. And then you got Roy Keane, who just literally will just
speaks his mind.
He sometimes, majority of the time, I think he says it as it is, and sometimes he goes a bit too far and kind of has opinions that not everyone's in agreement with. But I think you need people like that in football just to kind of keep it interesting half the time.
You need people who are going to say it how it is, because then that's how the public start getting manipulated as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's why a lot of Sky Sports, I think it's a good medium now. So you have Souness, who's traditional. The thing I love about Souness, Souness is obviously a very volatile person, tough Scottish geezer. And I think he was having a go. I can't remember who it was, but similar to what Adebayor did to the Arsenal fans in the Man City game, when he celebrated in front, and like when Stephen Carr did it to the whole end. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Well, there was something this year where I think one of the fans was winding up the away end or something like that. But let's not forget, Graham Souness literally ran on the Besiktas pitch and stuck a Galatasaray flag in the middle of the pitch.
Oh, right, yeah, he did.
And ran off.
Didn't he?
So, Turkey, we know what Turkey's like. Games get abandoned because your fans get hit with, players get hit with things. So, Graham Souness is a crazy personality for football, but I like him. I think players like pundits like him, Roy Keane. I respect honesty in football. It's nice to see people. If people have played rubbish, they've played rubbish. Listen, that's the best. It's the best way to be, and that's why some of the newer pundits aren't as. I think they're all on Sky Sports. All pretty honest. I mean, Carragher's obviously been there. If Liverpool are bad, Liverpool are bad. Same with Gary Neville. he's the same as well.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with that style of punditry. And if I was a pundit, I'd be like Graham Souness. To be fair, I think
fair enough. Yeah,
just
I think
got to be honest.
Point.
So yeah,
I think so. Have we got any more stories or?
No, that's all
that's
the stories.
all for this
I want
week?
to conserve them. I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket because I've got a few pearlers, but I want to.
Brilliant.
I want to. It'll be hard to match that one with Roy Keane and Ross McCoy. That's
a good one.
Amazing, because I think if I seen a football player driving down, his missus was driving him down, I'd just thought, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I mean, I can't drive, and my missus can't drive either. So
at least you get the bus together, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, buses, trains. That's a bit more acceptable. But do let us know on the socials what you think of men behaving Chadley. I think we've had a nice successful segment there, and that could be a great segment going into the next couple of months as well. So let us know your thoughts. We do have a few fan questions just to wrap up today. So we'll go through those quickly first. We got one from Matt Bannister, which is quite simple as who will win the Premier League next season? Lewis.
Who will win the Premier League? Well, I think the obvious choice is Man City. But then I really don't want to rule out Liverpool, because after a season like they've just had, coming so close to winning it, I think that will either deflate them or that will just motivate them even more. That will motivate them even more to win it next season, and I think you've got to put them in as contenders, considering how they reacted to losing the Champions League final.
Yeah, definitely.
To Real Madrid, and how they came back this season. So I think those two are really the big front runners.
Yeah.
I couldn't really see...
I can't see anyone...
Yeah, because Tottenham...
disrupting the apple cart.
Yeah. I would say Tottenham just aren't consistent enough. Arsenal and Man United are just... they're just not on their level. And now Chelsea have a transfer ban. And
yeah, it's not...
this squad they've got now hasn't challenged, and now they've lost Hazard, so I don't really see anyone else.
I kind of feel like Chelsea are further away from winning the league than they even were this season. Well, the season just gone. Tottenham, I think they will get some players in this time, because I think they've actually got a transfer budget now. Arsenal, I can't see too much happening. I can't see them progressing too much next season. I think they need to kind of formulate a proper plan. I think Emery might need they might need to give him a couple of seasons to bed in properly. And is there another team? Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham, Liverpool and Man City. I think I just named the top six. But yeah, I think it will probably be Man City again. However, I do think Man City do have a hole at left back where they still haven't managed to get someone in properly. And they will need to replace Fernandinho, because I think he'll still have decent output, but I think at the same time he could slow down quite a bit. Whereas I think Liverpool will have fewer kind of first team players that they need to bring in, like starting players. So I think if Liverpool can kind of, I think it could be similar to what it has been the season just gone. So it could be very close. What about you, Nick? Do you think that losing obviously the title to Man City will spur Liverpool on?
I feel like it was deflating the manner in which we lost it. Really, the way that we lost it was the 0-0 at Goodison Park. The 0-0 at Old Trafford as well didn't help. So what I would say to that is it's a good job we won the Champions League, because if we didn't win that, I really do think we'd have struggled next season to mount a challenge.
Yeah, it's just demotivating a little bit, really.
Yeah, I think we've got a player in Van Dijk who no one in the world would turn down if given the opportunity. So I think we've got a player. It's nice to know we had Suarez for them 3 years. We've got one of them players again. But not only have we got one now, we've probably got three. I think if you look at potentially four, if you look at Alisson in goal, who's a goalkeeper who looks remarkably calm. We've obviously got Van Dijk at the back. We've got Salah and Mane. I think you've got the other players in behind, Trent, Robertson, Firmino. So I think Man City will be too strong to beat again. I think any team Guardiola manages are hard to beat domestically. I think they're easy to beat in the European competitions, though.
Yeah, I think it is sort of. It's just down to the manager, like how Pep can just get like the best out of any group of players really that he's given. I think Zinchenko has been quite underrated at left back. So even if they don't bring in, a first choice left back and Benjamin Mendy stays on the sidelines, then Zinchenko still, for me, he could do a job there, and they can still be challenging. The same thing with Fernandinho. They look like they've been looking at, I think, is it Rodri they've been looking at?
Yeah.
And also there've been shouts of like Sal Niguez and stuff like that. So I think they will get a replacement in for him.
Zinchenko's never lost a Premier League game in which he started, which is an amazing statistic. And I think they've won every game as well. I don't think they've even drew. I think it's something like 17 or 18 games.
Yeah.
Zinchenko started last season, they won. Which is amazing. I think he's very underrated. And looks exactly like De Bruyne, so, you've got to like him straight away.
Yeah, definitely. We've also got Aston Villa Central have sent in just asking for our thoughts on Pickford's penalty. Do you think it was right to put that pressure on his shoulders? And, how do you think he did?
Well, to be honest, I didn't actually, see it.
Did you not?
Okay.
No.
No, not a good place to start then.
Yeah.
I saw it.
I saw the highlights.
Listen, I'm a goalkeeper myself, and if I was asked to take a penalty, I would take one. If you're good at penalties, you're good at penalties. I think penalties, it doesn't matter where you play on the pitch. I always remember Ashley Cole used to be amazing at penalties.
Yeah.
And he was a left back.
And David Luiz as well.
David Luiz.
I think I remember there's one, I don't know who it was for. I don't know if it's for England, but there was this one penalty where Ashley Cole just literally tapped it he just basically passed it to the keeper.
He missed the worst one. Euro 2014. 2012, because it was the World
Might
Cup.
have been that one.
It was the one against Italy where Pirlo absolutely destroyed Joe Hart. Remember?
Yeah, it was that one.
Paneckered it down the middle. Yeah, so I think there's that goalie in the I don't know if he was he Paraguayan, Colombian? I'm not sure.
Oh, the keepers used to score all the time.
He used to take free kicks. Like he got on the edge of the box.
Didn't he play for, was it like Leon or someone like that?
There's Rogério Ceni, who's Brazilian, and then there was Higuita. Was it René Higuita as well?
Is he the guy who did the scorpion kick?
Yes, I think so. He had the kind of big hair.
Yeah, that's it.
I think it was Higuita.
But he used to take penalties. Yeah. So if you're good at penalties, if penalty absolutely battered it into the net. So, I don't disagree with it, but if I was, it kind of does come across as a little bit disrespectful. I don't know what it is about it. I remember when Ricardo scored his penalty against England in the 2004 Euros. He took his gloves off because he knew he'd scored, and I was just like, that's just literally rubbing salt in the wounds. So
a little bit.
I don't know how I feel about it. He scored, it worked, so we got away with it this time. Would I want Pickford taking a penalty in a World Cup final, 5th in the order? No, I wouldn't.
Fair point.
So I think it depends about the situation, the environment, the severity of the game. So I think no one cared about that game deep down, even England fans. Yeah. They didn't even celebrate when we won. So
no, it was fair, but it was quite quiet.
And the fact Lewis didn't watch it shows how uninterested he was as well. So.
I did watch the highlights, but I didn't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I didn't bother to watch the actual game like when it was on. We've got one question that's kind of from Lewis, actually. Well, he just mentioned this on the WhatsApp group, and I thought it might be a good question to ask. It's where will James Rodriguez end up? Obviously, he's at Bayern. Real Madrid doesn't seem to be in Zidane's plans. Obviously, he's on loan from Madrid. Where do we think he's going to go, and who do you think would benefit from taking him on?
I think that's quite a difficult one.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting that Bayern Munich had him on a 2-year loan and they just weren't interested in buying him. But
wasn't it that he's told them to cancel the contract?
I think like Kovac doesn't seem to like him. Zidane doesn't seem to like him. I think James, I don't think he wants to stay, but then equally I don't think he really wants to go back to Real Madrid either, so it's difficult.
I've heard the main contenders are like Juventus and Napoli.
I've seen PSG as well.
PSG, I can see the PSG one happening. I think
the Napoli one will be the most interesting.
What was the name of the guy that used to have the tall Argentinian guy in the middle who never used to get going for him? Pastore?
Javier Pastore.
Yeah,
It just sounds like a glorified, a bit like Moore and Pastore and Lavezzi to a degree, where they had these good players but they never played them.
Yeah.
I don't rate James Rodriguez at all.
I don't know where he's going to go.
I can see United just offering like 70 million for him. It's just got United for him.
It is a United style. I was trying to think who just in the Prem would benefit from him.
It's happened before where players have had good World Cups and they've gone to United. So you look at like Rojo after the World Cup went to United. Di Maria went to United.
Was Forlan one of those as well?
Forlan to a degree, yeah. I think Uruguay struggled, but Forlan was like the glowing light in their team at that stage because they obviously didn't have Suarez, Cavani at this stage. Yeah. So, yeah, I could see it happening to United, whether it be a loan deal because they don't want to pay for him. He clearly is a bit of a disruptor. He disrupts our team's play.
Yeah, it seems to.
Zidane and Kovac don't rate him, so. I don't know where he'd go. He went to a club in Monaco who were building, so they were building around Rodriguez, and that's maybe what he needs. So somewhere like Napoli might be good for him. But if I was United, I wouldn't look at players like James Rodriguez. I'd look at players. I'd look at players for the future.
Definitely. Listeners, do let us know where you reckon that Rodriguez should be going next season. We've got one final question as well. It's from Vito. So it's, should one-season wonders such as Wan-Bissaka make big money moves after just one successful campaign? I think it's a bit harsh to call him a one-season wonder, but what do you guys think?
No.
No.
Because I think you've seen before when one-season wonders have had one brilliant season, then they've gone to a club and they've flopped.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one of the worst things you can do as a club.
Yeah.
As well.
I mean, I think from Wan-Bissaka's point of view, I think there's a difference.
He's quite young as well. So.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between a one-season wonder and a young player who comes up and has a breakout season. Like, you could have said that Mbappe was a one-season wonder when he went from Monaco to PSG, and equally Wan-Bissaka's put up some of the best numbers, tackle and interception numbers in Europe this season, and he's a guy who's converted from a winger to a right back. So I think it's one of those things. I've seen Man United are being quite heavily linked with him, and from my perspective, it would be beneficial for Wan-Bissaka to stay at Crystal Palace for another season, just to kind of make sure that he's got his best interests at heart, and he's not rushing to make a move to a club like United or. Teams like Tottenham as well might be looking for another right back. For me, it would be beneficial for him to stay at Palace. But again, I'm not surprised that there are clubs looking for him, and I don't think it would be, from Man United's perspective, the worst shout. But yeah, so from Man United's perspective, by all means, go in for him. But from his perspective, I would just stick around for one more season and just see how things go. So. Any final thoughts on that question or on the podcast as a whole?
Yeah, I think the question by Vito is a really good one because the example of Wan-Bissaka is a bad one because I think Wan-Bissaka, I think you're right in saying there's a difference between a breakout season and a one season. One of me remember Michu when he had that season at Swansea.
Perfect example, yeah.
And the mad one that I've seen in the last week is Stuani. You remember? He's played for Middlesbrough. Well, he scored 24 goals this season for Girona. He's been linked with Barcelona.
Been linked with Barcelona and Nottingham Forest.
And
how can you possibly be linked with Barcelona and Nottingham Forest in the same sentence?
It's strange. And I think like West Ham as well, maybe linked with him.
And Bolly from didn't he play for Swansea? He had one.
Boney.
Yeah, Boney.
And then he went to Man City
and
for 30 million.
He had like one good season.
I was watching Premier League Years actually, talking about that, Lewis, and it was on then. I was like, "Oh my god, that happened!" Boney signed for 30 million to Man City. That was really.
I think he's still on Swansea's books now. I don't know whether he's gone, but he has been.
Because he scored for Ivory Coast the other day. And the headline was, "Look what you're missing out on Swansea," or something like that.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where he's like not good enough for Swansea, but you also feel like he's probably on quite big wages. So, like, I think they loaned him out to the Middle East.
He'll go to China, I imagine.
Yeah, he'll be a China or Middle East signing to like Al Ahly or something. Or
he just barely played for City as well.
Yeah, wasn't necessary. It was during that era at Man City where they were bringing in guys like Scott Sinclair and Jack Rodwell, and it was just kind of like not.
Robinho as well.
Who was that guy they had for half a season? Was it Pizarro? They had him for 6 months.
Might possibly.
And they had Lampard,
They had
obviously.
Jerome Boateng as well,
For
and that
6
didn't work out.
months. There was some really weird
They
signings,
did have
wasn't there?
some weird sort of signings during the first kind of 5 years after their takeover. But let us know your thoughts on those questions and how we've answered them. And do remember to send in your questions to us ahead of next week's podcast as well. Your questions, your suggestions, your feedback's always very helpful for us. And it helps us progress and helps us improve the podcast when and where we can. So I hope you've enjoyed today. We'll be back again obviously next Sunday for another podcast. So thank you for listening. We'll see you again next week.